Good evening, 49er faithful. The NFL draft is underway in 2023. We have already had DeMeco Ryans shaking things up in Houston, but here we are. Between Two Beards is back. We had a little hiatus. I am your host, Rob Schuh. That is my co-host, Randon McMahon. We were off for a couple of weeks because yours truly was nearly dying of some sort of a weird virus slash bacteria. Randon, if this were like the 1800s, if we were playing that old game, the Oregon Trail, which as a kid of the 80s, I grew up playing that in school, I would have died of dysentery on the way to Oregon. That's the way in which this would have played out. So I'm doing better, not completely well, but significantly better. How are you doing, my friend, on this draft evening?
I'm doing good. I'm interested to see how it shapes up. We got a lot of early picks for division rivals here. Seattle's on the clock. The pick is in. So, I'm doing well. I've missed you, man. So I'm glad you're feeling better.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes, Seattle on the clock. I was thrilled to see the Cardinals trading out. As I was saying to you before we began the program, to me, that signifies the Cardinals acknowledging where they are in the rebuild process. When you're sitting there at number 3 and you have the opportunity to select a premier edge rusher and you decide to trade back for excess picks, I think that is an admission of, hey, this roster needs work. We want to reconstruct it for the new coaching staff. And in order to do that, you have to accrue those picks. But on the other side, with Houston, they had an exorbitant number of picks coming in, a lot of assets. I'm loving DeMeco Ryans and Houston's staff, their aggression at getting their quarterback and their edge rusher.
Seattle went corner Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois.
A little bit undersized, but that is not scaring folks. A top 5 selection. Man, Witherspoon coming out. I will say I am not as intimidated by that pick as I could have been by a couple others by Seattle at that spot. No huge shakeups as far as who has been selected to this point, but definitely a big shakeup when it comes to the trade that has occurred there.
Yeah, so going back to the Houston, you're looking at if Cardinals pick Will Anderson, that's, he's not the prospect that Bosa was, but you're seeing that guy for, probably a decade on the other side of the football wreaking havoc against our tackles. And so, whoever they get at 12, or if they continue to trade back, it does kind of point to the fact that they have more holes to fill than the picks that they have available. So,
right.
They're trying to move back here. So that's something interesting about what we see. Kyler Murray is probably going to be out at least until the second half of the season, if not the whole season. So it might just be a lost season for Arizona, which means they'll probably be picking in the top 5 picks. Do they use the capital to go back up and maybe get Williams out of USC and part ways with Kyler Murray? Do they go get a different guy that's in the top? Marvin Harrison Jr. is supposed to be a top 3 pick. Will they go get an elite wide receiver to pair with Marquise Brown? I think it's going to be interesting next year to see how what Arizona does. As far as Seattle going, Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, right, had a great rookie season on the defensive side of the football. Lots of interceptions. They're trying to shore up the secondary there. Obviously, there's more than one threat coming out of San Francisco, and they need to do their best to lock that down.
Absolutely. It harkens back to, right, with Arizona, new coaching staff, new GM coming in, harkens back to the Niners in 2017. You wonder, obviously, hindsight is 2020, but you do wonder if the Niners would have benefited from a similar strategy. Instead of just trading back from 2 to 3 and taking Solomon Thomas, had they found a trade partner, and they may have been looking and just been unable to go as far back as Arizona did in this one, but Arizona taking that other path. Instead of taking the key defensive lineman, they're at 3. Hey, they're going to trade back, accrue those picks, and take that strategy. Honestly, I think it's a viable one myself. I want to say what's up to those that are here in the chat as well. Thank you to all of you that are watching live as we go side by side with the draft. Obviously, the Niners could have some action tonight. Randon and I will talk about how that might transpire. Probably wouldn't be towards the tail end of the round. Probably not going to happen at all, but could happen. To those of you here with us, we are appreciative. Eric Schultz in the building first. Luke Walsh coming in to say hello. Raphael 5629ers Sneakerhead here on the channel. Always coming in to say what's up to myself, Randon, the Sneakerheads, and everybody. Bullpup 33 coming in, also a Sneakerhead. Rob, you're a legend. Seattle trying to stop Debo. Hey, you got to have some, as Randon was saying, you got to have some folks opposite of the Niners' vertical passing threats. Absolutely, the Niners are the lead dog in our division. So everybody is looking up towards us. Andre Moore coming in to say hello to everyone. Also a Sneakerhead here on the channel. And Sean Walker dropping the super chat. Much appreciated. Also a Sneakerhead here on the channel. Niner Empire DMV, welcome back. When's your next call-in show? Great question. It is going to be Saturday. This Saturday, I'm going to put out a poll on the channel, on the community page on the channel, asking for your preferred times. But I want you all to be able to call in and give your live reactions to any acquisitions that may have transpired in between now and Saturday. Obviously, the Niners going to start their action most likely tomorrow, and we should have a few picks to talk about on Saturday. So great question, Sean. Appreciate the donation. The call-in show will be this Saturday for all sneakerheads of the channel. Make sure that announcement goes out to all sneakerheads. It has been too damn long. All right.
So the total is in. The total is in. So Houston gave up pick 12, 33, and next year's first and next year's third to go up to 3.
Gotcha. So it is, in essence, again, a 3-for-1 swap going from 12 to 3. Obviously, the Niners doing that for Trey Lance. Now, the Houston Texans doing that. D'Amico just liked the move. He was like, hey, 12 to 3 was a strong play. We're going to do that one again.
Yeah, they gave up kind of a lot. I mean, I figured they would have to. I like the move because it's ballsy and you're going out there, but you're assuming that the Houston Texans don't make that big of a jump. They don't have any wide receivers. They had a lot of holes last season. There's a big chance that they pick within the top 10. Arizona might be getting another top 10 pick along with their pick next season. It seems quite steep considering that Houston gave up their 33rd as well. It's not like Houston doesn't need a lot of holes. This kind of seems like a too much to give up, especially with you had a lot going on. But if D'Amico finds his guy and he's a 10-plus sack individual, it'll be worth it at that point.
It will. And technically, ironically, the 33rd pick this year is technically, comparing to other previous seasons, is technically a first-round pick because of the cost of draft picks given up by Miami in that whole scandal, right? There are only going to be 31 picks in the first round tonight. There is a penalized.
This just in. The Cardinals move back up into the top 10.
Trades abound.
They trade with the Lions. So Cardinals are on the clock.
Cardinals on the clock. Goodness gracious. I felt like last year there weren't a whole heck of a lot of trades in the first round, and we were going to be due. We are seeing that come to fruition with 2 trades within the first 6 picks. The action is popping.
They got to go with a tackle here. I mean, they need an offensive line.
Got to go with the tackle.
Kyler Murray's injured. Keep him upright. Isn't there a guy, Paris Campbell Jr. or whatever out of Ohio State? Isn't he like the number one
Paris
guy?
is the most common name thrown about there.
So Lions received 12 and picked 34 for the Cardinals to move back up 6 spots.
You could see him. I mean, it's either a lineman or an edge, right? It's got to be one or the other. They've fallen in love with either the top lineman or they feel the second edge in the class is worth trading up for.
Do you think Jalen Carter is an option here? Big defensive tackle.
I thought Jalen Carter was going to go to Seattle. Honestly, did. I thought Seattle was going to take Jalen Carter, and I was more concerned with that selection by Seattle than who they ended up taking with Witherspoon.
So, I mean, I think he's the best available player. He doesn't necessarily fit a need, but you look at what Arizona's been dealing with Aaron Donald over the last several years in that division. Maybe they think that they need a disruptor up the middle.
That's right. And you can't go wrong with a big body staple on either side of the line, right? Whether you're talking about grabbing a tackle or a stout defensive lineman as well. Going to get to a couple of comments here, then we'll get into our first topic as we are waiting for the Arizona Cardinals.
It is
to make
Paris
their
Johnson
selection.
Jr. Paris Johnson Jr.
Paris Johnson
Not Campbell,
Jr.
Paris Johnson. Yeah.
Paris
I
Campbell.
got the name
Yeah.
wrong.
So,
I got the name wrong.
going with the
Paris
tackle,
Johnson.
going
Yeah,
with the best available offensive tackle. I mean, that's when you have to compare what they gave up to move back up. But at first glance, that feels like a win. Move back, accrue additional picks for Arizona, jump back up, and still get the best tackle who some people had you slotted taking at your original position.
So they get pick 33. They give up their own pick and pick 34. And they get an additional first rounder next year to still get the go ahead and get their guy that they probably might have taken at 3 anyways.
That's right. That to me is a prudent move by Arizona. And I don't like seeing it. You never want to see prudence from people in your division. You want to see them acting erratically. Yes, Raphael 562 was also pointing out the move, Cardinals coming up. And I definitely want to take a moment to call this out. Kurt Papadakis, sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in and say, hey, Rob, long time. Hope all is well. Go Niners. Also, my son just rung the bell. Chemo's done. All tests negative. Boom. Kurt, that's phenomenal. This is a cheers to you and to your son. That's great news about getting through the chemo. Couldn't be happier. I hope that everyone who's watching is also sending in those positive thoughts. Kurt, that's just really positive news. Well above and beyond anything that could be going on in this draft right now, anything football related. That's much more life stuff, and that is what is important. So I do want to say I appreciate you sharing that, Kurt. All right, so we are now on to the 7th pick of the draft, but let's talk some Niners stuff while the draft is ongoing.
This is kind of equates to the Niners. Cardinals pick a tackle, obviously supposed to be their staple to keep Kyler Murray upright.
Right.
We thought maybe they would go receiver. Maybe they go receiver at pick 34 to go opposite of Marquise Brown. But this is going to be the battle that we're going to be seeing possibly for the next decade, Nick Bosa versus Paris Johnson Jr.
It will be a ferocious battle, of which I'm sure Nick Bosa will always get the better. I mean, that's just the reality. V Breezy coming in with a question for us says, hey, Rob, I don't know if y'all are discussed this yet, but do you think we move up to day 2? So the Niners are scheduled to pick at the tail end of day 2, right? Day 2 is rounds 2 and 3. The Niners don't have a selection in the regular portion of rounds 2 or 3, but they do have those compensatory picks that fall at the tail end of the 3rd round that got added in at the end. So we have 3 picks on day 3, 3 third rounders. I do think there's a reasonable chance that the Niners package some of their picks and move up. When you look at the total math of trying to move up early into the 2nd round, it decimates the 49ers draft capital. But if they find someone that falls into the middle of the 3rd round, that's where I believe John Lynch may package perhaps a 3rd and a 5th, 2 thirds together, and move up a handful of slots, somewhere in the 15 to 20 slots up from where they are right now. I could see a move like that. Randon, do you think that they will stay put at that first pick, which I believe comes in at 99?
I don't think they should. I think they should go out and get a guy if they feel like a guy falls to them. Guys fall all the time. Their biggest need, though, is tackle. Tackles don't often fall, right? Like their primary positions.
They
need
not
to go up and get them. But if they feel like there is a guy that they need, they want to win now. So if it's my draft crush or anybody else, if they want to go up and get and trade away future picks, so maybe 99 or maybe a future 2nd to move up in the round this year or whatever to a team that doesn't need that pick, who knows? But they if they feel like they need to go and it's their guy and he can start at right tackle day 1, I wouldn't be opposed to trading future picks to move up into the 2nd round to go get somebody.
I think you just called out a key component to the draft strategy for the Niners and to this first topic that we're going to talk about. And that is the Niners are attempting to win now. They are not, as the Cardinals just showed, building for the future, right? They are not accruing picks so that they can make a move next year. John Lynch talked about this when he mentioned Brandon Ayuk coming up. And I think that takes us into this first topic that we have around the trade rumors that we've obviously heard flying about the San Francisco 49ers. You've heard it with regards to teams calling in regard to Trey Lance and around Brandon Ayuk, which a fuel was added to the fire by the 49ers' decision to hold off on announcing those fifth-year options until after the draft. They've done that in the past where they've held off until after the draft, but they have also announced it prior to the draft. So that has led to significant speculation. So now you have both of those names being bandied about the league as being quote unquote available. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of fundamental logic of keeping versus trading each of those. When you look at Trey Lance and the idea of keeping him on the roster, obviously potentially needing him at the beginning of the season versus the asset that you're going to get in return for Trey Lance, what do you see as being the logical choice here? Obviously, you have to take calls, but are you seriously considering trading Lance if you're in charge of the Niners front office?
You're not. I don't think you're actively trying to trade him, but you are open. So, for example, if one of the teams that wanted a quarterback missed out on their guy and are interested in Trey Lance, then maybe you see a second round pick being offered for him, right? But it's going to have to be something substantial. Lynch already came out and said, hey, I talked to Trey Lance about the possibility. We're not actively trying to shop him, but I want him to be aware and not blindsided in case it does happen. We want him to progress and be a quarterback for the 49ers. So I think they're open to both sides. Like you said, Bruce Lee, you got to be like water. So if a pick comes in that they can't say no to, whether it's a late first round pick, early second round pick, and they go and a team says, hey, we really want Trey Lance, then, maybe you got to entertain that fact. But right now, the uncertainty of Brock Purdy could be week 1, week 6. We don't really know. And to diminish your quarterback room even more, I think it would be a mistake.
It seems that way to me, is that you're looking at the Niners who spent the vast majority of the offseason talking about a rule change to get 3 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster with sort of that exception for the third quarterback. Obviously, any team can choose to keep 3 quarterbacks if they so choose. The Niners did not. Technically, they did. It's just Jimmy Garoppolo was injured, and it bit them in the tuchus. Obviously, they want that addressed, and you're looking at the Niners potentially weakening their own room of quarterbacks at the same time. To me, the logic just isn't there. You don't truly know what you've got in Trey Lance. Other teams obviously don't know what you've got in Trey Lance. So when we talk about price, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, it's all going to be skeptical, right? There aren't going to be these huge offers, which I do think if a big offer came in, the Niners would accept it, and they should accept that, rightly so. It's my humble opinion that they're not going to get big offers. Clearly, they haven't to this point. And the difference between having another quarterback familiar with the system, athletically gifted, who might end up being a baller himself, keeping him on the roster feels like the right play to me. Allowing him to develop, truly finding out what you have in him, because you're not going to get significant assets back in return.
So Raiders just select Tyree Wilson, defensive end out of Texas Tech, pairing him across from Max Crosby, getting big edges on both sides. They're going to be rushing the passer over there in the AFC West.
That's legit. That's the kind of pairing that the Niners need to have, is someone opposite of Bosa to truly unlock this defense. I wondered if that wouldn't have been the selection for the Cardinals there had they gone defense. I'm fully in support of, hey, you lock down the best tackle available in the draft when you can. But I did wonder if that might be the selection for Arizona as well. Feels like a good addition for the Raiders. But it does leave them open to the idea that, they've got Jimmy Garoppolo and then question marks.
Well, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get the ball to Devontae Adams. Hunter Renfrow is going to be healthier this season. So I think, and they're going to get Josh Jacobs back. So they're going to run the football. They were able to run the football last year. He was the rushing leader for the NFL. So I don't think they're too worried about that. So going on the defensive side of the football, because they gave up a lot of leads last season. So being able to take care of that, I think was a big move from them. And you're looking at Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get the ball to either guy, right? He's not going to be able to go stretch the field vertically, which Devontae Adams can do. But Hunter Renfrow is going to be a machine for him.
Yes.
Trent Taylor, all those guys that are the gadget players that are in between that can run great routes and put people into turnstiles. He's going to be able to throw that either way, or throw that ball wherever he needs to get them and have a pretty good offense, I think.
Hunter Renfrow and Jimmy Garoppolo seems like an ideal pairing of wide receiver and quarterback. And for Devontae Adams, to your point, almost any quarterback out there is going to be able to get the ball to Devontae Adams because of the level of skill that he possesses. And even a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, who's not known for chucking it deep, when you have someone who can go up and get the 50-50 balls at the rate that Devontae can, maybe you see him take a couple of additional shots there as well. We've got reactions in the crowd. Andre Moore, to our talk of trading Lance, says, no way, no trading Lance. In tying a bow on that topic of Lance and then transitioning to Ayuk, would you feel comfortable? Let's say the Niners did get some asset pool thrown their way that they had to say yes to, and they traded Lance away. So we're not getting into price at this point. We're just talking about that Lance has been traded. Are you then comfortable going into the season with Purdy probably not fully healthy to begin the year, Sam Darnold, those two being your two quarterbacks on the roster, and then someone that we most likely take in the 6th, 7th, or undrafted free agency after the draft this year? Do you feel good with that roster as your quarterback room going forward, or are you concerned without Lance there on that roster?
A little bit of both. I would say I would be fine with Sam Darnold for 4 or 5 games. So like this would have to be a trade that they have to feel good about. But if it happens during this draft, like they know nothing about Brock Purdy right now. Like
right.
He literally just got the brace off. Like he's starting to stretch. Like he hasn't even grabbed a football, let alone attempted to throw one. So
yeah. Hey, the stretching's going great though. The stretching is grade A stretching.
He waved at people at the Giants game, so it's all healed. I
throw the man in.
Yeah. I just think I'm fine with Sam Darnold for a couple games or half the
to
season.
Start the season.
Yeah. I mean, I think as much as people want to make fun of him, he does have the raw tools. You see he can make every throw in the book. This will be the best situation he's ever been in, right? You look at, he was put into a dumpster fire in the Jets. And then Carolina wasn't that much better. I think he's had 4 different head coaches in 5 years. So it's going to be, it's something crazy that he really hasn't had any stability. Obviously, this is also a new coach and a new system, but it's going to be the best weapons that he's had around him. And I saw enough of Purdy last season to know that we can win games with him. Will he be an elite top 5 quarterback? No, I don't think he'll ever be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but I do think that we can win games with him. And then it also extends the rookie contract out another 3 seasons for the Niners. So the window of being able to put as much stuff around him is that much greater.
That's very true. By the way, Luke Walsh correctly asserting that the Falcons have taken Bijan Robinson, the running back, with the 7th overall pick. Or is that the 6th pick there? Am I losing track of it already? 8. God, I'm already falling behind. My numbers are escaping me. We are at 8 there already. Apologies, trying to keep up ESPN on the background there. Bijan Robinson to the Falcons. Good selection. I'll tee up on the other side of this argument that you just made there pretty eloquently. I will go with Luke Walsh, that if you let Lance go in a trade, as this hypothetical that we're walking through right now, we're saying, hey, if the Niners got a trade that they couldn't pass up for Lance and they did let him go, would you feel comfortable with that quarterback room? I'm with Luke. I don't feel good about that room after letting Trey walk. I would if we were at that point where we knew that Brock Purdy had recovered from the surgery. But as you pointed out, Randon, that is just an unknown at this point, and we're relying upon the fact that that's going to be the case. I would be much more comfortable letting Trey play, giving him the first team reps, as Luke talks about doing here, seeing what we actually have. And I've got to say that almost no matter what you see from Lance, I can't imagine it hurting his trade value all that much, because I just don't think that his trade value is incredibly high at this point to begin.
I think you're right. I think there's not going to be enough of a pick being thrown around to make this happen, and I wouldn't do it. I mean, outside of it being a late first round pick or something to where it's like,
Right.
okay, like they're going out and they're overpaying for this kid. I'm keeping him because I still believe in Trey Lance. I still believe that he has what it takes to be an elite quarterback in this league. And so is that really worth it at this point? I understand that you haven't got anything from him and you feel comfortable with Purdy to maybe give up, if it was a first round pick or a high second. But at this point, I'd rather just see what this kid can do and let him go through camp because again, this is what, like the third or fourth quarterback ever to have this surgery. And to be honest with you, what has Nick Mullins done afterwards? What did Jake Delhomme do afterwards? I mean, he played for a while, but I guess they both those quarterbacks were never elite to begin with. So maybe,
right. What skill set did they begin with prior to the procedure versus after? But that's a fair point that we're basing this off of success for this procedure primarily in baseball because it is far more often a baseball injury. Let's talk about the price for Trey, and then we'll come back and talk about trading Ayuk, obviously, as being another rumor that's been bandied about. But I think the way in which you spell that out is where I'm at. Is, hey, if in order to really be bowled over for Lance, you're talking about a first or a second round pick in return, and quite honestly, like when I look at, hey, if you redrafted Lance in this class, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that he'd get picked in that range. And so I do think we have to keep our eye on this round and the early part of round 2, just in case there's a team out there that says to themselves, hey, if we were redrafting Lance this year, we would have given up the 28th pick to select him. And so we're willing to trade that this year, again, for the unknown quantity of Lance. I would say for me, if you offered anything better than pick 50 this year, I would have to take it. And that's a guy who's still high on Lance, who still believes that he can be who we hoped he could be when we selected him there at 3. But when you look at roster construction, the value of that pick, using it on a player that can add to this team right now, I would have to take any offer that came in with a pick in between, 20 to 50, which seems like that reasonable range where Lance could get drafted were he in this draft class.
Luke Walsh is right. Bears trade back to the Eagles, so they swap picks 9 and 10.
Eagles have traded up one. What's with the Bears and trading one spot? They did that with us in 2017. They really just like those micro moves. They don't want a big splash. They just want the little guys.
Hey, they have a lot of holes too. And so,
it's a good question by Luke here. Is that the Jalen Carter? That seems like the best.
That would be nasty. They lose Hargrave, but they get Jalen Carter.
That feels like, wow. Yeah. After letting Hargrave go to move up and get Jalen Carter.
And then you pair him with the other Georgia big guy that they got last season.
Man, Eagles, sometimes it pays to be good.
Luke Walsh, that feels like you're like 3 minutes ahead of me. What's going on over there?
What's that?
Luke Walsh is like 3 minutes ahead of me. I'm like,
he's on Twitter is where he's typing in and getting all of the tipped picks. Let's see. Josh Cook coming in here with the @RobShoe says, Rob Shoe, I do not think the 49ers will let Trey walk. At least I hope not. I'm hoping for a fair, open quarterback competition. Also, haven't been on for a while. I miss that smooth baritone in my life. Josh, good to have you back. Always a pleasure for me to be on the airwaves. And yes, I'm with you. I don't think the 49ers should let Trey walk in a trade. I also hope that's not the case. I would have to take the offer if it were anything better than pick 50 this year because of fundamentals of roster construction and the brief window that Super Bowl windows are often open for. I think you have to capitalize on them. You have to make moves that are often shrewd, that may not feel good to the person involved, in this case, Trey Lance. And I also believe that having a third capable athletic quarterback on the roster could end up benefiting the Niners as well. So I'm not going to be unhappy when Trey Lance is on this roster after the draft. And I will say my definitive favorite is that no trade happens for Trey Lance. I think it's like a 2% chance that any trade were to happen for Trey Lance.
I think the move that it may be more prudent would be let Trey play, see what happens, see what he looks like. If he dominates, say the first 6 games,
Yeah.
right? Niners are 5-1. He looks great. What do you think other teams would pay for Brock Purdy once he's healthy?
That's interesting. I mean, after what we saw from Brock Purdy last year, he has to be worth a first round pick. Has to be. Like maybe more.
I mean, you could easily probably get a second for him or multiple seconds or conditional seconds. I just think it'd be interesting to see what they would end up doing for that, because then you got the guy that you want in Trey.
Right.
Well, do you know after 6 games? I mean, I guess not, but
I mean, if you're not holding on to Brock Purdy, right? Because you got more than 6 games from Brock, and the lights were on in that stadium, right? He was lighting it up, and that's why you'd be able to get the first round pick for him. So it's tough to say whether
maybe you wouldn't trade it at the deadline, but you could probably trade it in the offseason.
Yes. And that feels more reasonable when you're headed into next offseason making a trade happen. I would be less turned off by that move. Again, I'd still make it. If an offer came across for trade during this draft, I'd make it begrudgingly because I think you have to, but I think it's unlikely. Bullpup 33 coming in with this one. Hey, Rob, if they trade up to the low first, is there one guy the Niners would covet? I will say that I've not scouted first-round talents to say definitively who the Niners would covet. I'll turn it over to Randon to see if he has a name, but I will target the position that I think the Niners would go after. And to me, it would be a lock between either edge rusher to pair opposite of Bosa or offensive lineman to lock in at right tackle. I won't be surprised if the Niners sort of avoid the right tackle scenario because of where we're at in the draft. But if you jumped up into the first where you then could select a starting tackle, I think the Niners probably would at that point. Randon, who would you have your eyes on if the Niners managed to have a first round pick in this draft?
As did you. I have not scouted any first round picks or even marginally second round picks.
You're like, there's no need. I'm going to focus on the third round.
So I think tackle would definitely be it. I mean,
yeah, Luke Walsh agrees.
Yeah, I mean, you're going up to get a bookend, a guy that would play right tackle for a year to 4 years, depending on how long Trent Williams wants to play in his career, and then maybe either sticks at right tackle because he's played there his entire career, and then you draft a left tackle, or flips it over to the other side. So I don't see that happening. It would take a lot to get into a late first round pick. You're probably trading away a future first round pick to get that or a set 100%. Player. So. I mean, I know the Niners expect to be picking in the bottom 10. So, it might be an easy swap, but I mean, there's going to be talent next year. And maybe they feel comfortable with McKivitz this year. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I don't know if it really depends. You might be able to get a quality guard in the third round and move Burford out. We talked about that. So it really just depends on how desperate they feel, but it's not easy to move up into the first round. Like you're going to have to trade away, a future second and so, but I don't know. I mean, it'd be pretty hard.
Yeah, if you look at the Niners' current assets, depending on which trade model you look at, whether it's the Jimmy Johnson one or the more recent, the Jimmy Johnson, if you traded all of our assets for the highest pick you possibly could, I think it only gets us into the mid-second round. You might be able to go a little bit higher with the more recent draft capital model that is out there because it's a little easier to make moves and a little closer to what's been happening within the NFL. So that's the model that is a little more accurate, but it would take almost all of the Niners assets to move up. To your point, really the only realistic way to get in would either be to include a player in that or to include a future first round asset, as you called out there. And I don't think that the Niners are likely to do that. In my mind, you're probably looking at a trade up into somewhere in the third. If someone they covet has fallen, that feels like a much more reasonable move for me in this one than trying to get up into the first. But hey, it'd be fun if indeed it did happen, because you never know. Luke pointing out, hey, Joe Staley was a late first round pick. And every now and then you can land yourself a nice Hall of Fame tackle right there at the end of the first round.
Dude, Jalen Carter is a massive human being. Like, whoever made this suit for him had to put in some work. Like,
big
Jesus,
dude.
bro. It looked like he was like ducking under doorways to get through to the draft room. This guy's
Why does that pain me so much that Philly was able to swoop in and grab maybe the best defensive player in the draft?
Who only fell because of something that he was a part of that he didn't even like. He wasn't even the person that was at fault, right?
Man, it sucks when the rich get richer like that, especially when it's a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who I now despise more than any other team out there. So, yeah, that doesn't feel good to watch them get
He
Jalen
seems
Carter.
like a Philadelphia Eagle type player.
He
like
does.
Just a nasty dude. Yeah.
He's got the nasty attitude. He's ended up in a nasty city. It's a perfect freaking fit. Alan Elizer coming in. Alan, by the way, we're doing a Sneakerhead call-in show on Saturday. I'm going to put out a poll as to what time is best for sneakerheads. But this Saturday, during the latter rounds of the draft, we're going to be talking Niners. Just want to make sure I got that out there. Alan says, Rob and Randon, nice to see you guys again. Great to see you as well, Alan. Let's go Niners. Debo that like button. Do Alan a favor and hit that like button for Randon and I. Batman29 coming in to say, what's up? Where have I been? I have been dying of dysentery. We started with that joke on the beginning of the program. Rob was dealing with some serious health issues. Were we playing the Oregon Trail, he would be dead of dysentery along the way. Just throw that body right off of the wagon and leave it there on the side because I was cooked. Absolutely cooked. All right, here we go.
He got the zombie virus that they found in Antarctica. That's what you got.
I might be a zombie at this point. I might be dead and just talking regardless. It's a little bit sketchy. Come on Friday, coming in with this one. I can't work it out in my head, so I'm going to read it out loud first. He says, I know Niner Nation won't like it, but trade Kittle for late 1 and a third. So, okay, so you're trading Kittle for a late first rounder and a third rounder. It's reasonable value. Trade the third and another to move up to the second for a tight end. And with the first one, take the O-line. Interesting. Okay, so Come on Friday is saying you move George Kittle for assets. In return, you get a first rounder that you use on a starting right tackle, and you get a third rounder, which you package with another third to move up into the second to select one of the tight ends from this deep tight end draft. I'm not a huge fan of moving viable players that you know to be stars at their position for a chance to draft someone at that same position that you don't know is going to be good. I would point to the Kinlaw move as prime example of why that can be a highly problematic strategy of taking someone that you know is producing in Buckner, trading him for, additional assets and using one of those assets to draft a replacement. It's just fraught with peril. So I would be avoiding this for that reason, but I do see the logic of you're moving one player to bring in two and fill potentially that need plus the right tackle move. Where are you on the do you or do you not consider a trade for George Kittle, Randon?
I mean, everybody's always available, but
They are.
For me, it's like you said the same thing. Like you're now have two unknowns. You have a right tackle unknown and a tight end unknown. You're taking away weapons from Trey Lance. Because generally tight ends don't come out the gate. You look at the best tight end prospect in the history in like the last 10 years in Atlanta had a good first season, horrible second season, right? Not consistent. So it took a while for George Kittle to go up here. I still think you need to realize that we're trying to win a Super Bowl here. Like, and having that much unknown, like I would rather than patchwork a right tackle and have one maybe awkward position than have multiple, because he's not only looks like Bears go tackle to help Fields stay upright.
All right, Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, Chicago making the selection. I
see what he's saying though, like get younger because Kittle is a little bit older,
right?
And all that kind of like that, and I get that they, it's always going to Father Time's undefeated, but I mean, what he means to this organization, what he means to the locker room. You listen to Brock Purdy when he was on, I forget which podcast he was on. It was the Kelsey's podcast. They were on there talking.
Right.
And he said Trey Lance and George Kittle were the two guys that took him under his wing the most.
That's right.
So, he's going to be constantly doing that to the young guys there. And I think he means more than just the X's and O's and the yards that he puts up on the field. So also,
I think that's
also Purdy been throwing left-handed this offseason just in case.
the idea that Kittle is more than just his production is a key one for me. Like you've got to take that into account. I think calling that out is incredibly important. Face of the franchise, locker room voice, an attitude guy. I agree with you that I see the logic come on Friday is using here, and I don't think it's out of pocket. I don't think it's unreasonable. It's a fair suggestion, and I would not make it myself. I'm keeping Kittle. I'm keeping the sure thing, and going with the idea that the Niners may feel better at right tackle than we do. One of the questions I wanted to pose to you just off the cuff here, Randon, is like going into last year, we all were saying over and over again that there was a huge need at guard and safety, right? And the Niners were like, no, there really isn't. Like, we're pretty locked in at who we feel we've got at safety and at guard, right? And they promoted Talanoa Hufanga, and they felt good about it. And it took the rest of us a couple of games to catch up and be like, oh, yeah, there's reason that the Niners felt good about Huff. And the same was true at the two guard positions, going in with Banks and Burford. It felt like the Niners were taking a huge risk, and they knew what they had in the building, or at least had a good feeling, better information than we had about what they had in the building. So what is that position you think that maybe we all believe is a need for the Niners, that talking heads are saying the Niners need to select someone at this position, that they may say to themselves, no, we're good. Like, you may watch them go through the entire draft and not address this key position that the rest of us have been shouting from the rooftops. Take a wild guess at what you think that position might be, that the Niners feel they're better off than we do.
Repeat the question. Sorry, I was doing some research on George Kittle's contract for you.
No, all good. So last year, going into the season, we all thought the Niners needed to draft a safety. They said, no, we have Talanoa Hufanga. They were obviously right about that. Going in, we said, you need to get some guards. They said, we've got Banks and Burford. They were also right about that. What do you think the position is this year where we're saying, you and I are saying, you need to draft someone at, let's say, edge, and the Niners say to themselves, no, we've got Drake Jackson stepping up? Like, what is that position where they feel good about the next man up, but you and I don't yet?
I think it would probably be edge. I mean, the fact that they brought in a bunch of people, a bunch of, Kerry Hiders and all this kind of stuff that they brought in Cleveland Farrell. They brought in all these other guys that they know they're not going to get an elite edge in the third round. And so, why not? Like, is the guy that you're picking in the third round better than Drake Jackson? Probably not. Is the guy in the third round better than an experienced Cleveland Farrell? Probably not. So I think that's kind of where I would go, is that they feel confident because they not only they bring in, I think we already have like 14 defensive linemen already assigned to this team. So, which, all those guys aren't going to make it. So to bring in another one really doesn't make sense for me. I think they probably think they're okay there. Tight end, they've done interviews with plenty of tight ends. I think that's probably almost a guarantee that they at least take one.
Yeah,
and you would need offensive linemen. So I think edge would be that pick.
I think you could be onto something with edge. The other one is right tackle. Like, I won't be shocked if the Niners actually don't address that. Like, we all say no, they need to, but they go through the draft, they don't address it in any meaningful way. And then you see them go with Colton McKivitz to start the year and potentially address it mid-season. If it turns out that they were wrong on McKivitz, you can always do that in-season trade. So you've heard it here, that the predictions for positions that everyone is clamoring for the Niners to draft people at, but maybe they feel better about the players they already have in-house. Randon's prediction off of the cuff, edge. My prediction off the cuff, right tackle. All right, let's get back to trade talks here and get back to talking about trading Ayuk. This is obviously one that came up. He's going to be due a big contract. The Niners have already paid Deebo Samuel. You hear a lot of arguments of you can't
Before we do
pay.
Come on Friday did a follow-up saying the only reason he said is that I say Kittle he's injury prone, older, and you would get cap space. So you right now, if you trade, you still owe him his money. So his cap coming in. Oops, looks like we're
For George Kittle.
yeah. So he played 16 he played 15 games last year. So I mean,
Yeah, other than missing the start of the season, the first 2 games, he came back and then played well.
Had his best touchdown production with 11.
Yep.
So
a lot of that coming with Brock Purdy, so you would think that's going to keep going up.
Yeah. And then his out is after this year. So his dead cap is like, I think I'm trying to pull it up here. My computer is just taking, but his out is after this year, where his dead cap, I believe, is 9 million and then 4 million after that. You're saying to pay Ayuk. Ayuk's contract doesn't take effect for 2 seasons. So like his essentially his 5th-year option is next season. You probably work out the contract at that point, which means the signing bonus is only spread up a little bit over his 5th-year option, and then you can make his first year relatively low to accommodate George Kittle, and after that, his contract isn't a part of the team anymore. So I don't really think it's necessary that you have to trade away anybody to fit BA in at this moment. Like it's not like they're signing, somebody as far as that needs the money this year.
No, the BA situation is a full year away. That's why, to me, the trade talk of Ayuk is premature. I mean, what Lynch said with regard to trading Brandon Ayuk is exactly where I'm at on this. This is the Niners Super Bowl window. We are freaking in it right now. The fact that we were in the NFC Championship game last year and the year prior illustrates that point, that we are smack dab in this Super Bowl window. And Brandon Ayuk was our leading receiver last year. It's madness to me to consider trading Brandon Ayuk this year. Now, next offseason, as you're heading into paying him a gargantuan contract, it changes the equation slightly, but you have another season of data to draw back upon. If Brandon Ayuk is yet again your number 1 wide receiver, then again, I just don't think you can actually let him go, because what you're looking to do in that sort of a trade is you let go of the veteran wide receiver who's about to get a huge payday. You get back that asset. You use some of your assets on a replacement. Again, that flawed logic of you're using a draft pick that you got for the old player on the new player. So it creates a lot of pressure on that new rookie, but you're not guaranteed that they are going to be successful. If they're a first-round pick, you're probably looking somewhere in the neighborhood of a 65% success rate, somewhere around there, versus a wide receiver that works well within this season, is a dog, does block downfield, knows the playbook. Like, to me, this one makes even less sense than trading away Lance, because in the Lance scenario, you really can only start one quarterback at a time. So if Brock Purdy gets healthy and stays healthy, then you can roll the dice and say, well, we don't need to have a bunch of backups. For wide receivers, you need to have a couple of stud wide receivers. You certainly have Debo, but adding Brandon Ayuk or losing Brandon Ayuk in that scenario would be a huge hit. So for me in this one, unless the trade value were astronomical, I can't see letting Brandon Ayuk go this offseason. Next offseason, I think we'll have to have this conversation again.
Yeah, it looks like Luke is correct with the Titans taking a guard. That's big for them. Derrick Henry, towards the end of his career, keep him upright, let them run the football because they don't got any. So, pushing that move down. Yeah, I think we are in our window.
Skoronski, that's a good name for a lineman. Peter Skoronski.
Yeah. I just think you look at a lot of the organizations that are allowing themselves to be, trading away their players for future picks and not worried about who they're getting, i.e. Kansas City with Tyreek Hill, i.e. the Patriots with every single player you could name on their roster outside of a few. It's because they had their quarterback. They figured out who their quarterback is. They trust them to be that quarterback for over a decade. And so when you have an elite quarterback who's top 5 in the league, you're going to be in the playoffs regardless of who's on your roster almost every single time. Right. So you can afford to get younger. Oh, this is a mistake.
Jahmyr Gibbs by the Lions. 2 running backs in the top 12 picks. That's got to be,
what is this, 1995?
right? we are reversing all of the devaluation of the running back in a single draft.
It's like, okay, you have Swift, which you don't ever use, and he's good. I know you lost Williams. I guess now they're getting Swift and then Swift again, right? Like two guys that can pass catch, and they just
Swift and Swifty.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I just think you look at like, I guess I'm a little harsh on smaller running backs just because they're not very often do they succeed in the NFL.
No,
if you were
the
to
odds are stacked against them when it comes to health.
If you were to take the top, I looked this up yesterday. If you were to take the top 100 greatest statistical running back seasons, how many would you guess would be from running backs that weighed under 200 pounds?
The top 100, you said?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 8.
You are exactly right, my friend.
You're kidding me.
No.
That was just like pick it out of thin air. And I went low because obviously by the way you set that up, like it was going to be a low number. That's as right about where you'd expect it. But that illustrates a pretty key point that it takes some padding in order to withstand the bruising profile that a running back has to withstand. And I mean, that plays into why the position was devalued is the number of hits that they're taking, how short their career is. Do you really want to use a first round draft pick on someone who most likely is going to have their career end in 4 to 5 years, or at least their production drop off significantly?
So those guys are going to be like Ray Rice did it twice. Chris Johnson, ex-Niner Charlie Garner.
Ooh, Charlie Garner was the man. I was a huge Charlie Garner fan back in the late 90s.
Austin Eckler. I mean, he's right at 200 pounds. So I said under 200 pounds, but he's right at 199, 200. So I threw him in there. And the last one, Jamal Charles.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize Jamal Charles was under, but again, shorter career as a result.
Always injured,
being less. And several of those players that you listed there are more of the bowling ball variety where they may be like Eckler. I don't think of him because he's a stout build. He just is a little guy, right? So proportionally speaking, he looks like a muscular dude. He doesn't strike you as one of the smaller backs in the league, but you're right, hovering right there at 200. So
it's going to be, but I mean, he goes to a great place for him. I mean, the Lions are on the come up. They were one of the top offenses in the NFL last year. You're going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown there, Swift, him. He's a great pass catcher, so they could do a lot of what San Francisco does with McCaffrey and put him out wide and all that kind of stuff like that. So you might see something along those lines of positionless football, as Come On Friday is saying with Gibbs. I just don't see him as a 3-down back in the NFL, and maybe the Lions aren't asking him to be. Maybe they're just going to have give him 50-50 split with Swift because he's often injured as well. So we'll see how that works out and moves forward with the Lions. But that offense is going to be nasty, and they're my pick to win the North.
I'm excited to see the Lions, man. They are a fun team to pull for, being in the doldrums of the league for so long, having such a likable head coach at the moment, having been on Hard Knocks so that you get the backstory of some of the players, Jared Goff, getting cast off by the Rams. I got to admit that I pull for the Lions to make this reclamation complete. And it would be great to see them win the North. I would be thrilled by that. In bringing the conversation back, a couple of people have commented around the Brandon Ayuk situation. We were talking about Josh Cook, sneakerhead here on the channel, says Brandon Ayuk is such a pure route runner. He's always open, needs a quarterback who can hit him deep. Cough, cough, Trey Lance. I mean, I would say that Brandon Ayuk seemed to pair well with Brock Purdy as well. I think he's going to have a stellar career with the Niners, regardless of who's throwing the ball to him. He's just the complete picture in my mind. So let's put a bow on this conversation around Ayuk. He is a phenomenal player for the Niners, obviously led the team in receptions and receiving yards last year. What would it have to be in order for you to move Brandon Ayuk? What's the trade that's got to come across your desk to say, yeah, I'm willing to give up our potentially best wide receiver, best pure wide receiver, in the middle of a freaking Super Bowl window?
It would have to be the pick that the Packers are about to make. Like it'd have to be a top 15 pick, to be honest with you. Like, because then you go out and as much as I don't like to go the hey, trade a receiver, get a younger receiver because it didn't work out with the defensive, but Jackson Smith and Jigma, you get younger than at the position. Not that BA is old, but you kind of you lower the cap hit at that point. And go from there. But for me, it's like, I think, I think BA it can be a number one. Will he be able to do a number one things? It remains unseen. I hope Debo gets back to running routes instead of being the wide back all the time. Cause I think he focused so much on being a running back that he wasn't as dominant of a wide receiver last season.
I agree.
But yeah, they don't need to trade him. I mean, if they feel like he's done everything that they've asked, like he's become a more accomplished pass blocker. He's had that, the dog in him, as they say. And he's able to compete and dominate when at a high level in the National Football League.
Absolutely. And I do think that, I'm in agreement that, hey, Debo getting back to playing the style that we saw the year prior, where he was leading the league as a receiver, because otherwise I think Come On Friday does have a point here, right? If Debo continues that style of being more of a runner, it could end up hurting over the long run his career as a total. And so if that were the case, you could see Brandon Ayuk having the more longevity between the two, and you don't want to make that wrong decision in hey, you have two studs, you decide to pay one out of the two and being wrong about that. Not that I feel badly about having paid Debo. I think he should have been paid. I just will feel badly if we let Brandon Ayuk go in this one. I agree that it needs to be
crystal ball. If we go with the crystal ball here,
yeah,
when Debo's contract is up, the Niners will know whether Lance and or Purdy, who they are and what they are.
Yes.
So if we do have an elite quarterback in either one of them, then you can let Debo Samuel go, draft a first round rookie, because your quarterback play will be enough to carry the team. Where now, like, you need every position to be high, because you don't know what you got in the quarterback. Obviously, I still don't think they know what they got in Brock Purdy. Right.
No, they do not.
Because the injury negates whatever they saw last season. Right. So there's no guarantee that he comes back healthy. Right.
I will say, I think they know what they have to some degree, but I agree. They don't know definitively what they have.
So I just think, I think you look at if they feel confident in their quarterback, they can feel confident in letting Debo walk at that point, because then you're going to be one of those teams that's able to not have to worry about where they're moving and this and that, because they got the quarterback locked up. Steelers trade up to the New England pick. Steelers are now on the clock.
New England trading out for Pittsburgh, who is now on the clock at 14. That because Green Bay selected defensive edge Lucas Van Ness at pick 13. Pittsburgh on the clock. Who do you think they moved up to get there? Looking at the middle of the first round, you could see a situation where they're going after a tackle. You certainly could see who some people thought was cornerback one, Christian Gonzalez, coming out of Oregon. Who else might they be up there?
They got rid of a wide receiver and Claypool. Maybe they go Smith and Jigma there and help their quarterback out, because their offense didn't move the football really at all last season.
Yeah, absolutely. You still obviously have the top two tight ends on the board, although that seems like a little bit of a stretch.
They got Pat Freiermuth, man. He's a stud.
That is true. That is true. No need for one of those top tight ends. It'll be interesting to see who Pittsburgh moved up to select there. All right, so we continue on here. We've talked about the price for Ayuk. I'm going to just put a bow in it by saying that I agree. If it's not going to be a mid first round pick, if we don't hear, the 49ers have traded within the next couple of picks, then it can't happen. Because even at 15, where we're at now, that wouldn't feel like enough sure value for what Brandon Ayuk can bring to this team. So I say don't trade anybody, but that does leave us with some positional needs. So talking about ranking the top 5 biggest positional needs for the 49ers, let's start at number 5. What do you think is going to be the 5th biggest positional need for the 49ers?
Man, you're putting me on the clock here, as they say.
I can jump in first. If you'd like me to take the first swing, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, take the first swing. Take the first
All
swing.
right. I'm going at number 5. I'm locking in kicker as the 5th biggest need. And admittedly, it's because I'm a little bit in the dark. Zane Gonzalez missing an entire season for injury. The minimal amount that it cost us to make the trade to get him on the team just does not leave me feeling like he is locked in to be our starter. And when you're looking at a team that is in a Super Bowl window, your leading scorer on almost any team is your freaking kicker. So that's fairly important. It was important enough that the Niners overspent on bringing Robbie Gould back on his last contract. I mean, it was a mild overspend. I thought it was worth it. The man has been perfect in the playoffs. It's still possible that the Niners go with a different veteran that they bring in. It's still possible that Robbie Gould comes back to the organization at this point. He is still out there. However, I see this as an opportunity to get cheaper at a position. When you have a bunch of 5th-round picks, that feels like a sweet spot for selecting a kicker. So to me, kicker sneaks onto the list of 5 biggest potential positional needs.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, they need to bring in a body. It's probably going to be a 5th or 7th round pick, which we have an abundance of. So, I'm not too worried about that. I am worried that we're no longer automatic when it comes to kicking the football. So, I would agree with that there, that it's a definitely need. Steelers go Broderick Jones, tackle.
Locking in that tackle. Hey, you can't go wrong in trading up for a stout offensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean,
especially the second best one in the draft.
Yeah, they could barely run the football last year with Najee Harris. Their quarterback is still young, so I like that move for the Steelers. They always want to win in between the tackles. 6'5", 311. He's a big boy.
Interesting. All right.
I cut you right when you were drinking. My bad.
No, I'm throwing up Luke's prediction here of his 5 biggest needs: offensive tackle, cornerback, guard, free safety, tight end. I will say, Luke, we are not in lockstep on this one. Okay, so I've got at number 5 kicker. What are you putting as that 5th biggest need, Randon?
Yeah, I would say, and I know it was not consensus last time I did the podcast, but I'm going to go linebacker here because I think that the depth there is kind of not suspect, but we don't really know what you got from McCrary Ball. You don't really know what you have from Flanagan Fowles, other than they're both played well on special teams.
Yeah,
you have Owen Burks, who's a special teamer, but do you really have a guy that's going to be able to carry the load if either obviously not if Fred Warner's out, but if Dre Greenlaw? I mean, he was on an All-Pro level last year. So, I'm kind of taking this question as we have 3 third-round picks. Where would they go there? And so I think linebacker for me is right around that 5th mark. Could they use a guy that's like we talked about, that is going to blitz the passer? Wilkes likes to blitz a little bit more. Are they going to go for a rangy guy like they've gone in the past that can cover? But there's a lot of unknowns at linebacker 3, and I think that would be something to look at and get more depth there and a camp body that can come in. And because Dre Greenlaw's contract's only 2 years, you do have an out after this year. So if you felt confident in said linebacker, you could definitely get cheaper at the position, which the Niners will need to do going forward with the multiple extensions coming out.
I think that's an astute one to call out. Bullpup 33 also putting linebacker on his top 5, saying it comes in at number 3 for him. I'm glad that you had it on the list because it doesn't crack my top 5. And I think that it's worth calling out. And the reason it didn't is sort of that other side of the same logic you just laid out there of the top 2 positions are so well filled. The special teams role is so locked down that really it feels like we're just missing that third linebacker. But you do a good job of pointing out that while that can seem not terribly important, all it takes is one injury to either Dre or Fred Warner to make it a major necessity. And it was an area of strength for the 49ers last year. And so you hate to go from an area of strength to any potential area of weakness. And that does make me wonder if the Niners will add to it. I see this as probably taking some of those later round picks and adding to it. A 5th, as you put out there, would be one of the higher draft picks that I could see going out to a linebacker spot. But it is a need. Do have to have that third linebacker in there.
Linebackers
again,
are not
agreeing it.
Linebackers aren't a highly sought after position, right? They got the tackles, the edges, the wide receivers, the corners. You could see a top 50 player in this draft fall to, the late third round, right? I mean, right. What was it? Nakobe Dean, what is the guy for Philadelphia? He had a first round grade, fell away to the third round because of injury. So, you could have a guy like that. And then, me, I'm always best player available. If it's definitely linebacker, I have no problem taking a third round pick and using it for a linebacker.
Yes. Honestly, I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible selection at all to take a linebacker at that point. Randall Riley coming in. He's got clear priorities. He says kicker, offensive tackle, tight end, and kicker. He comes in to point out, hey, most of these games come down to that dang field goal to win it. So he believes that is kind of important. Well, I snuck it in there as so number 5.
All of our 7th round picks are going to kicker. Let him battle it out. Is that what's
Come on Friday saying, hey, there's some great great linebackers in the USFL and XFL right now that we should be looking at. I'm excited that the XFL is emerging in the way that it is. I really hope that takes off. The NFL needs a freaking minor league, and some of these other leagues could serve as that. Coming in at number 4 for me, as far as biggest positional needs, I've got corner, and I'm using the same logic you use for linebacker at corner, in that you need to have significant depth. You only have to go back to the atrocity that was our 2020 season to watch what happens when you don't have good cornerback depth. And when I look at the team beyond, obviously, locking it down with Charvarius Ward, feeling very good about Diamador Lenore. I'm not feeling good about that spot right behind there with the vacancy that E-Man leaving for Detroit. Left for San Francisco. So that for me comes in at number 4, would be cornerback depth. What would you have as the 4th biggest positional need, Randon?
Yeah, I was thinking about it here, and I was thinking I like where the corner's at. I don't know if it's necessarily need. I could see maybe a 5th round pick or so, because you got Womack who took steps, you got Lenore who took steps. Mm-hmm. You got Embry Thomas who played well his first season and didn't really figure it out. Maybe he gets his act together, comes back. But, where is this guy? Are you really expecting a 3rd round corner to come in year 1 and be able to play in that position? Probably not. You are probably going to need a guy to step up who's already been there. And Womack would be that guy last. And so, maybe they get another slot guy that they could use, and they feel that Womack can go to the outside. They also brought in a former 2nd round pick. This
dude
year
from
too.
Atlanta.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's necessarily a need, but I am going to go with a DB, and that's the safety position for me. So I think safety is going to be up there. You need somebody to train and sit behind Gibson. And so safety is not a position that really gets taken often in the 1st round. So you see a lot of them in the 2nd and 3rd round go. I would say there's a lot of good box safeties in this draft, which you don't necessarily need. So, maybe targeting a guy that can play in coverage, do the Ward style things where he can play in the slot, come out, those types of things, and do that. So I would say more safety than corner.
I like that. And I do think that safety is a key call out. Come on Friday. Agreeing with you there. By the way, just saying is throwing some gas on the fire. I saw you erupt on this on Twitter, and I think rightfully so. The A's and the news that they will be headed to Las Vegas, I gather, in the fact that they are putting together a stadium deal. That is unfortunate. The city of Oakland did not deserve to be abandoned in the way that they have been by their sports organizations.
Yeah. I mean, it's brutal. There's no reason. Obviously, if you go farther back, the A's gave San Jose's media rights to the Giants, so they didn't have to move to Tampa Bay. They said, hey, this Bay Area deserves more than one team. The Giants are people from the Giants, not direct organization, but are openly sabotaging this thing. They're not giving up rights back to San Jose, which, I mean, I understand it's a big market, but they're not doing anything to help the A's at this moment, other than the Twitter, I wish, we could have two teams and that kind of stuff, which is meaningless. So, I mean, they're not doing anything to help with the A's at all. It's not a done deal for Vegas at all. I mean, they haven't purchased anything they're trying to purchase. They're asking for $500 million, which Vegas seems to be able to do with the Raiders. Will they want to do it again? For another team? I'm not sure, but I don't know. I just think it's all this posturing. Like it didn't take anything for the for the Giants to get a stadium done. It didn't take really much for the the Warriors to go over to sit. Like they got a full stadium built and a new arena. It's like, I know San Francisco, it makes no sense to me. It's like, oh, well, it's the politics. Well, San Francisco and Oakland have the same political leaning. Like, I just don't understand if it's the mayor of Oakland. I don't understand if it's just the fact that Fisher is a garbage owner, because he's also doing the same thing with the soccer team that he owns, right? Like he's keeping the salary super low. Like it makes no sense. I just don't know if he's all in it for profit and that's all what he is an owner for, which in that case, you're already a billionaire. Why do you need more profit? Like, I mean, I guess, like people who own teams should want to fucking win championships. That's what you buy a team for.
Yeah, right? It's not an asset. You're not buying a team to like hold value in your pocketbook. You are there to freaking compete. I like just saying, coming back and he's like, hey, sorry about going off topic. But yes, no, we wanted to talk A's for a little bit, but we're getting back. We're back to positional needs. My third biggest positional need for the Niners in this one is going to be tackle. And I know a lot of people have that higher on the list, but for me, it comes in at number 3. There has to be competition at this spot. I'm hoping that this isn't a situation where the Niners feel the same way about Colton McKivitz as they did about Hufanga or Banks. But I mean, they were right in those situations. So maybe I should hope that they are feeling that way about Colton McKivitz. But I'm slotting that in as number 3 for me. What do you have as the third biggest need positionally for the Niners?
Mine is kicker. I think they need to get somebody to battle it out. If Robbie Gould is still available like at the start of the season, and they can just cut Zane Gonzalez, then maybe they go that route. But they need to bring in a leg to compete with Zane. Not that he wasn't a good kicker. I had him on my fantasy team all year. He was solid when he played for the Cardinals, but you just bring in another leg in because you don't know what he's got, right? So I'd be remiss if they didn't address it in the draft. I'm not saying they need to go as high as a 3rd round pick to do that. But the guy from Syracuse, Moody or whatever, get younger. They got to get cheaper at some point. And I think that kicker is a need there because you can't just put all your eggs into one basket of a guy who hasn't played football in a year and a half. You
really can't, especially when it was an injury to his kicking leg, right? I mean, it was like a groin injury. Like it is very much an injury that could linger this season. Okay, going into number 2, I like that you have kicker on there. That obviously was my number 5. Number 2 biggest need for me is going to be the tight end opposite of George Kittle. We've been looking for this for a long time. This is a deep tight end class. It is time to unlock this offense by having a second viable pass-catching tight end. What do you have as that second biggest positional need there, Randon?
We are in lockstep on this one, brother. Going tight end as well. I think they feel the same way by interviewing all these tight ends. it's a deep tight end class. I wouldn't even be upset if they moved up higher in the third round to go get a tight end.
I won't either. That would be perfectly acceptable in my book.
So, you look at, we have 3 years left in George Kittle's contract. That would put this rookie, give him 3 years to develop. Maybe they keep Kittle around, obviously a cheaper deal than $15 million if he's digressed in his talent, or at that point we have an elite quarterback and we can just wave goodbye and say thank you, George Kittle, for your tenure here as a Niner, and move on with said guy. So we'll see. I hope they pick a tight end that is not just like, a big bullish, run blocker, and then guy that can get out of space, pass catch, and have that 1-2 punch that we had with Delaney Walker and Vernon Davis.
That would be phenomenal to have that 1-2 punch. Again, by the way, back to the draft, the Jets selected outside linebacker Will McDonald with that 15th overall pick, and the Washington Commanders are on the clock at the moment. The Will McDonald pick is an interesting one. That's a little bit of a reach looking at a lot of draft material that's out there. Certainly looking at The Athletic, they've got him as a mid-second round selection as the 8th best edge rusher out there. Clearly, Robert Saleh sees something different in that talent. All right, going to the biggest positional need for the 49ers, I'm going with edge. To me, that compliment to Bosa truly unlocks what this defense can do. Yes, I am hopeful that Drake Jackson can make a second-year jump, but the idea that he wasn't contributing towards the tail end of the season does not leave me feeling great, does not leave me feeling confident that he's going to make the requisite second-year jump that we would need him to make in order to feel good at that position. I would much rather have a true competition going on there. And another position, much like tight end, where I'd be fine if the Niners targeted a player that they coveted and moved up in the third round to get them.
I just think you're looking at, what is a guy in the third round going to do that Drake Jackson couldn't do last year?
Yeah,
right?
Very little. It's a reasonable argument.
Drake Jackson had more sacks per games played than any other player besides Nick Bosa. So, if he takes his body seriously and is able to come back similar to Aaron Banks, then the position is filled. Because I think that he showed enough to pass rush. Randall Riley's talking about giving flyer on Chase Young, for a 5th or 6th round pick. I don't think I think you would need a 2nd round pick to get Chase Young at this point.
I agree.
I just think they didn't pick up the 5th-year option because they don't know what they have in him. And so to the number 2 overall pick, especially since he won an award, you're going to pay him top 5 at his position. With Nick Bosa getting his contract, other people getting his contract, you're guaranteeing paying him $25 million for a player that you haven't seen on the field yet. So I think they feel comfortable with the approach of, well, if he dominates all season long, we're going to have to pay him regardless. We might as well pay him now than having to guarantee to pay him $25 million for a player that might not play. Also, on the other side, Sweat had a really good season. So maybe if they're okay with letting Chase Young walk or trade him mid-season if he's not producing or something along those lines. I don't know if the Commanders expect to be competing with Howell at quarterback next season, especially how stacked that division is. So maybe it was a wait and see kind of approach, but I don't know if we would get him for a 5th or even a 3rd at this point. I think it would have to be multiple picks, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
but I would call.
Stretch.
But I would call.
You have to call. I mean, you never know when a team reaches that point of letting someone go. There are deals to be had, and you don't want to be the team that missed out on getting an incredible deal for a rental when you're exactly the type of team that would benefit from having that rental. All right, so what is your number 1 positional need for the San Francisco 49ers?
So the number 1 positional need would be the position that I would feel comfortable with the team going up and getting somebody, and that would be tackle.
Makes sense. It's a very reasonable assertion, sir.
And so, I mean, Or, I mean, and I wouldn't even be upset if it was guard either, because then that means they feel like they can push out Burford to the outside.
Right.
But yeah, tackle would be it. I think you need to not go into the season with McKivitz. No offense to him, but he's just not a guy I feel confident with going forward. Commanders pick Emmanuel Forbes. New England is on the clock. So
cornerback Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State.
So
I like that selection there for you.
Yeah, I just he's tiny, 166.
That's wild.
That is
6'1", 166.
He's itty bitty.
Yeah. Those are like my measurables. I mean, less after this freaking virus that I just went through. I now weigh less than 166. But up until that virus, this was me. 6'1", 166. That is a slight frame to be playing in the NFL, my friend.
I was 170 in high school, and I was working out. So I mean, that's going to be something there. I mean, I don't know. I don't watch much college football, so maybe this guy. They've shown a couple highlights with him coming up and making tackles, so it doesn't look like he's afraid to. But we'll see. Maybe he's just. We all thought that Emmanuel Sanders Jr. was too small, and everybody went up and he's went up and got his worth for the Chargers doubt. There. So
some of the small guys can surprise you. We got a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to throw them in. They're quick ones. Bullpup 33. How do you guys feel about the running back room? I feel great about it. Christian McCaffrey, obviously a stud. Elijah Mitchell, not as hot on Elijah coming out of last offseason, this offseason, obviously because the injury concerns continue. I will not be surprised to watch the 49ers use another draft pick on a running back. I think that 49ers Twitter will explode. I don't think it's a huge need, and I believe that we'll continue to reload there. And as long as it's not a third-round draft pick, I think it's a reasonable strategy. I do think you have to continue to take bites at the apple when it comes to the running back because of the idea that it's quick turnover and you do need that next man up sort of mentality. So I feel good about the running back room, and I think the Niners will add to it.
Christian Gonzalez to the Patriots.
Christian Gonzalez, cornerback again. I like that selection.
Yeah, that seems like a good pick for them. Yeah, I mean, I think they need to make a pick at running back. I hope it's not pick 99, but I think they need to. I'm of the fan of constantly bringing in new blood to the running back room. It's a bruising job. McCaffrey was healthy for the first time all season, like in a long time in his career. Can you expect that to happen again? Elijah Mitchell was barely on the field. He was good when he was. So, I assume the Niners are good with the 1-2 combo there, but Ty Davis Price, you really didn't get what you thought out of him. Jordan Mason, is just a bruiser, that they can use to kind of close out games, but they really don't have another player at that point. And you usually have 5 running backs coming into camp, if not more. So I could see them making a pick. Hopefully it's a round 5 or round 7 selection. What I've been hearing is that the running back room is fairly deep. So maybe they go that route later on in the draft.
That's what just happened in the draft at pick 17 with the Patriots is like typical Bill Belichick sitting there middle of the freaking first round and gets what some people had graded as the best cornerback in the draft.
And he traded back like twice.
Oh, man, history favors the bold, I tell you. Okay, so we had another question. Oh, here we are. Come on Friday, came in with this one. Beards, would you package picks to move up to the second round for tight end? I'm going to key in on the round that was selected there. So, yes, I would package picks to move up and select a tight end. Would I package enough picks to move up into the second round for anyone? I don't think so, because if you don't include a player in that trade, then you're looking at giving up a lot of your draft capital to get up into the second round. And I'm just not comfortable with that. The Niners need some bodies to fill out the roster. So I wouldn't package too much to move up. I would be comfortable packaging a couple of the third rounders to move up some slots for a tight end. Yes, not all the way into the second round. Randon, how would you feel about a package trade up deal?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. The farthest they could get up was like 55, right? If they traded every single one of their picks. And so, I would be okay with it. I'm not trading all of our picks to go up to 55, but I guess it depends on the player. It would just take kind of a lot to get up into the second round. Are one of those tight ends guaranteed to hit? Like, you have to feel so confident in that guy to trade every single one of your picks or a future player and most of your picks to move up into the second to do that. I mean, there are like you could see players fall. Like, what if that Kincaid guy from Utah, which I think he's my number one tight end, fell into the 50s? I would feel okay probably about it. It'd be a bold move, but
see, that's interesting. If someone really falls like that, it kind of does change the equation.
Because then you're looking at a game changer there.
Right.
And do the Niners need 11 new players in camp? No, they don't.
No.
Right. So like, you're going to go get a dude at that point.
A dude.
I mean, would it be a ballsy move? I'd be like, but I'd be like, that's real ballsy there, Lynch. But then you get
it better work out, my friend.
And the last time you moved a crap ton of picks to move up and get a guy hasn't panned out yet. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out. But it is my second. It is my second.
I mean, but key words there. It hasn't worked out yet. Yeah. Yet it still could. Come on Friday agrees. Kincaid is a stud. So I think if that were the name on the board, you could talk me into a trade up into the second round for that. You could talk me into giving up a lot of draft capital if you're talking about one of, if not the top tight ends.
I mean, if the guy falls there,
that far.
If the guy falls there, you give up the 2024 second and this year's fourth or fifth or whatever, I'd be okay with that.
Right. Because we do have additional draft picks coming to us next season as well. We've done a great job with these compensatory picks. I think we're only down one of our own picks from next year's draft because of the Christian McCaffrey trade. I want to say it's our fifth next year that we don't have, something around there. All right, let's get back into the topics here. This is a quick hitter here. It's a guess. What position will the Niners select first, regardless of whether they hold pat at 99 and we have to wait forever for our first freaking pick, or something happens where the Niners trade up into the second round? What is the position that the Niners select first? Let's put something on the line here, because we could both be wrong and then nothing happens. It's a wash. But we're going to be hopefully attending a game together next season. Shall we throw a hot dog on the line here, sir? Hot dog and a beverage.
A glizzy, as the young kids say. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. What position do the Niners select? And feel free to wager along in the comments here. Obviously, you can't be in the hot dog wager, which is where the real money is at for us. But you can absolutely wager on what is the position, regardless of whether it's second round, third round, or hell, the Niners trade back into the fourth round. What is that position that they select?
Let's see here. My thought process is that Shanahan loves to go with the defensive line. Like, just even though we don't need it, that would be one that I would see high. But I'm going to go with what they've interviewed the most. They've interviewed the most tight ends. I feel like they're going to go tight end with their first pick.
Bold selection. Come on Friday came in to say, hey, John and Kyle will go tight end or D-line. He was in lockstep with you. You're going tight end. Randall Riley went tight end as well. I am with Edward Austin. Book it. I am a man of trends, and the 49ers have one trend in the draft in the Shanna Lynch era, and that is drafting edge rushers. They love to do it. And so that's going to be my wager. So if it is a tight end, I will be buying Randall a snack and a beverage. And if it is an edge rusher, he will be doing the same for me. I've got my fingers crossed that one of these games next season actually is in London. And man, if that's the case, we got to seriously debate as to whether that is the game we freaking go to and head over there across the pond. Let's get in some more wagers here for the audience. Bullpup 33 says defensive back. Alan Elizer. Folks that are wagering two, that's just too much hedging. Alan, I'm going to give you some grief here for hedging. He says tight end or defensive line. So he wins on either of our selections. Come on Friday says they'll relish the pick. Oh, that's second level. That is
That's
Ted
my style of
Lasso level
jokes.
puns right
I
there,
love it.
man. That is Ted Lasso level right there. I will take it. Randall Riley is already saying, "Hey, Randon, congrats! You've got the win locked down." Okay, so
If it is in
locked
London,
in.
if it is in London, it'd be like, what is it, like a bangers and mash? Like, is that
Yeah,
what I'd be?
it definitely takes on a whole nother level if we're in London. We
Bangers
shall
and mash and a
see.
Guinness. I could do that.
Oh, amen to that. That's a winning combination in anybody's book.
Yeah.
Here we are at the point in the program where we get to talk about our crushes. Do you, good sir, have yourself a draft crush that if the Niners walked away from this one with that player, you would be a happy camper?
So my biggest draft crush in this draft is the tight end out of Utah. I don't know how they would make it up to where he's being selected,
Yep.
but if they were able to do that, that would be my crush with of the whole draft. Now, of where I reasonably think that the Niners can get up to with what they have and everything like that is the tackle out where is he at? Out of BYU, Blake Freeland. So I really like his size, 6'8". He moves incredibly well. He set a lot of records, or was the best tackle at a lot of things in the draft. So he's very athletic. He trained with formal tackle Joe Staley to prepare for the draft. Staley had glowing remarks for him. So the zone scheme feels good. I think he is a good pass blocker for his size. Obviously, 6'8" was a problem for McGlinchey with a lot of those smaller bull rushers. He seems to have a pretty good anchor for where he's picking. Obviously, he's not a guaranteed prospect. Otherwise, he wouldn't be going the third range. But I think his athleticism, his run blocking acumen, being able to fit the zone scheme, and it's a position of need would be my crush there at that point.
That's a good one, man. Looking at him right now, you got some people saying he's, closer to like a fifth round. So certainly falls in that range of something the Niners could get done, either trading up if they like him a lot in the third or selecting him with where they're at, staying put. Potentially he may even fall to them if that is correct, that he goes closer to the fifth. But you're right. He's got size and that first step, had a great 10-yard split time as well. Looks like a little shorter on the arms, but hey, you can't have all the freaking intangibles or all the measurables if you're going to go in the third to the fifth round. So that is why some of those things aren't going to be all first round numbers. That's a solid crush, my friend. Okay.
I think that you could see him based on what I've read and what other people, anywhere from, like, people wouldn't be surprised if he got picked up like close to 50. But most likely he'll be in that 75 to 125 range.
That is ideal for the Niners swooping that up. That feels like a solid draft crush to have. By the way, I'm getting blinded by my own light here. Blinded by the lights. We need that soundtrack now. I'm going to go the same route, though. I'm going to give two draft crushes. One, if the Niners were to trade up, if they were to get aggressive, and the other, if they just stay put. With the trade, both of these, no shock here, I'm predicting my own win. Both of these are edge players. If they were to trade up, I'm saying Isaiah Foskey in the middle of the second. Potentially, if he falls into the third, I could definitely see them trading up. He's the edge out of Notre Dame, led Notre Dame in sacks the last 2 seasons, now takes home the all-time sack leader at Notre Dame, dethroning Justin Tuck, who came in and proved it at the NFL level. 4-star recruit coming out of high school, has shown the productivity over a couple of seasons. Doesn't necessarily have the first round measurables, but I really like him as a talent. And then if we're staying put, I am taking a homer pick out of Oregon, DJ Johnson. He has come in and made a formal visit with the 49ers, and we know that something like 5 out of our 9 selections last year had made a formal visit to the Niners, so that is a good predictor. It's not a guarantee when someone makes that formal visit, but certainly looking through our formal visits is a good place to start when looking at the players that we might draft. But again, I mean, a lot of question marks around DJ Johnson, but fits the speed edge mold, like fits what you were going for when you brought in D Ford. And that to me is the unlock for this defense is having that other edge. So it's clearly a risk. You're bringing him in to compete with Drake Jackson, probably favoring Drake Jackson to win out that competition, because you're looking at drafting someone at the tail end of the third round. You're looking at players here that are flawed in some way, and that's how they fell as a pass rusher. So to me, it's about making that selection and having more depth at the position. But again, 2 edge predictions from your boy Rob here.
Somebody's hungry over there. You should get some dinner after we get off there, because you're fiending for a hot dog. So yeah, I mean, edge is something there. I don't think it's as much of a need, but I mean, if they get a speed guy, they could let, what is it? Austin Bryant is the guy that we brought in from the Lions. They could let him go.
Right.
You could, that type of stuff. Like, we thought he could be a camp cut anyways. So, I just think that we're going to see a lot more out of Drake Jackson. And hopefully he gets his shit together, for lack of a better
I hope
word.
so too, man. I really, really do. Luke pointing out the Seattle Sea Raids are on the clock. I think that's Seattle he's referring to. Come on Friday says, hey, the wish list, tight end, Kincaid, Crush, edge, White, likely date to prom, edge, Harrison. I like the prediction of Harrison being the more likely there of the edges. It is a potentially deep edge class there. A lot of names in there. Yaya Diaby, Zach Harrison, Thule, the gentleman that I mentioned, DJ Johnson. There are a lot of names that you could see the Niners targeting in that end of the third round. But let's talk about some of the success the Niners have had in this regime. Let's talk about some of the biggest draft busts and gems of the Shanna Lynch era to close out this phenomenal draft program. If you're still with us, by the way, obviously my co-host, Randon McMahon, all of his information is down below in the description of the video. You can follow him on Twitter, follow on YouTube, follow the Hockey Royalty podcast. Obviously, the Kings are in the playoffs, all sorts of hockey stuff happening. Clearly, the NFL draft is taking your attention right now, but all of that information is down below in the description of the video. Do us the favor of hitting the like button on this video so more people see the draft coverage. Brandon, what do you see as some of those biggest draft busts and gems of the Shanna Lynch era?
Yeah, I would say the biggest bust would probably be Reuben Foster. I just don't like
It's a hard one to argue.
Yeah, they went back up and got him. So they used assets to go get him, and he barely played for us. He's not even in the league anymore. So I would say Reuben Foster is. I could understand people wanting to say Solomon Thomas, just because where he was drafted as at 3rd overall. You're hoping for a game record right there. But Reuben Foster's still a first-round pick. And for a first-round pick, barely to not even play hardly any football for your team is a disaster.
It is, because you could say what you want about Solomon Thomas. He played consistently. He just did not play up to his draft stock. He was not a complete bust. He just was drafted inappropriately. And
he's still playing for the Raiders, right? Like, he got a second contract. Now, it wasn't a lucrative one, but he's still in the league,
Yes. By the way, Bullpup says, hey, if the bet's paid in London, don't let him go cheap on the beer. There's no such thing as going cheap when bets are being paid. Bullpup, We've got to full bore on it. All right.
Sir, can I get a flagon of ale, please? That'll be $48.50.
I'll take your finest keg. Thank you. Yes. No, we take our wagers seriously. Okay, so there's your biggest miss. What's your biggest gem? What's the best uncovered gemstone of the Shanna Lynch era in the draft?
I think you could arguably say he could be in competition for the best player on the roster if it wasn't for Trent Williams, and that's Fred Warner.
Warner in the 3rd.
Yeah. So you get a guy who was kind of a hybrid safety linebacker. You trusted him to be able to play a position that he didn't normally didn't play again, like in a big conference either. Like he played for BYU. So you didn't really get to see him against, big opponents. You thought that he could progress and put on weight and all the stuff that you thought that he could do, you bet on the player. And I think that he is the biggest gem because he's a multiple first team All Pro. He's a quarterback. You gave him a second contract, being at that time, I think he was the highest paid linebacker in the NFL. I think he's easily the best gem. You don't often get all pro players out of a third round.
Yeah, that one is crazy. I mean, a crazy good selection there. I gotta say, Bullpup coming in to say, hey, Brock Purdy, honorable mention as far as gems go. Yes, that is absolutely true. I gotta say, I'm with Come On Friday on this one, that when you look back through the history of the draft, when it comes in the Shanna Lynch era, you do have to give props. Come On Friday says, got to give props to John and his team. They have many more hits than misses, in his opinion. The draft is such a coin flip. The draft absolutely is a coin flip, but the Niners, in particular in the later rounds in this era, the Shanahan and Lynch era, have been phenomenal. I went a slightly different route on this because I was I
want to comment on this. I was listening to, and I got to give them the props. I was listening to Locked On Niners, and they read a report from PFF, I believe, and they rated all the GMs over the last, over their tenure or whatever, and how well they did over the last 5 years or so in drafting.
Sure.
Niners in the first round were a bottom 5 team. Really only hit on Nick Bosa. You could say Ayuk, but they were a bottom 5 team compared to other players. Now, how PFF sourced it out was how well the player did versus replacement player level in that. In the day 2 and day 3 picks, Niners were top 10. So
and let's be honest, if you swap, like if you get Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster correct in year 1, it probably flips that whole round 1 narrative, right? Like missing on those 2 players was enormous as far as kneecapping yourself with regard to first round successes. So
it's like they do it based off of where the player was, like the pick that was drafted. So Solomon Thomas miss what weighed more than, a miss in the second or third or fourth, fifth round.
Rightfully so.
And so it's just, and then like the Ayuk hit for Ayuk isn't as high as if Solomon Thomas would have hit because he was drafted in the teams. Right. So, you're looking at, you could call McGlinchey a hit, right? He played all 5 years and got a second contract. Bosa obviously a hit, and Ayuk, but you failed on Kinlaw, Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, Trey Lance is an unknown, and you traded away two picks here. So like to get Trey Lance, so like they've done a lot to move up, and so there's been a lot more bad than good.
Yeah, I mean, if Trey hits, that changes the narrative because big miss on Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster, no question. Hit on Mike McGlinchey, huge hit on Nick Bosa, miss on Javon Kinlaw, hit on Brandon Ayuk. So you're at 3-3 there with Trey Lance sort of just deciding it. I'm with you that as of right now, he's clearly not been who you wanted him to be when you gave up what you did to draft him at 3, and it's still undecided because of the way in which things play out. So it could end up that way. I took this in a slightly different direction in that I got into it. I started looking through all these draft picks and I was like, hell, I don't want to do just one gem and one miss. So I went through and did one for each round. So I'm going to have a little fun with this, Randon. In the first round, obviously the biggest gem the Niners came across, Nick Bosa, 2019, phenomenal. In the second round, Deebo Samuel, also 2019, phenomenal second round pick. In the third round, Fred Warner, you called that out. Amazing to get Fred Warner in the third round, did that in 2018. Kittle in the fifth, we have 0 gems in the fourth round. Fourth round is like, dude, if we have fourth round picks, just trade them away. Kittle in the fifth in 2017. fifth round picks are off the chart. I'll get to that when I hit the misses. Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round in 2021, and obviously Brock Purdy in the 7th round in 2022. That's pretty phenomenal. Of the 7 rounds, to have Bosa, Debo, Warner, Kittle, Mitchell, and Brock Purdy as gems in various rounds, phenomenal. Then you look at the misses, and it does get painful. I lumped in.
That's huge. That's huge for Seattle's pick Jackson, Smith, and Jigma.
Oh, Jackson Smith. That's a hell of a name to pronounce there. Yes. Wide receiver. The number 1 wide receiver is the new target for. Do they still have both of their top 2 wideouts under contract right now?
So they have obviously Metcalf and Lockett.
Yeah. And he's still got to be on his rookie deal.
I think his contract kicks in next year.
Gotcha.
But you're looking at, I mean, now and Jigma played primarily out of the slot in college. He can play outside, but he had like over 16, I think it was 16 or 1,800 yards out of the slot. And that was with Chris Olave and Garrett Anderson, or Garrett Wilson on the team. Both those players said that out of the 3, who was the best wide receiver, that they all said in Jigma. So they're going to get a beast here. Now you're going to have a triple-headed monster in Seattle. That offense is going to look potent, especially with Kenneth Walker.
Don't like to see that.
They
don't like to see that at all.
They definitely got better. They definitely got better.
By the way, Bullpup coming in says, hey, don't forget Greenlaw. I did not. Like, when you look at the 5th round, picking the best pick in the 5th round was hard to come up with George Kittle because there are a bunch of studs in the 5th round there. Looking at the misses going round by round, that was tough. 1st round, I had a hard time not lumping Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster together. You had Reuben Foster, so I'll take Solomon Thomas as the number 1 miss. Dante Pettis was the biggest miss of our 2nd round selections. Trey Sermon, the biggest miss of our 3rd round selections. Joe Williams. That's why we just need to trade out of the 4th. Like, we have no gems in the 4th, and we have the Joe Williams story in 2017. The 4th is not a good one for us, but the Niners have not missed in the 5th round under Shanahan and Lynch. Not at all. They, in 2017, took Kittle and Trent Taylor. Trent Taylor's still playing for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Like, yes, he had injuries at the tail end of his Niners career, still producing for a Super Bowl caliber team. 2018, DJ Reed. It was our mistake that kept DJ Reed from being back on this team through that series of waivers that allowed him up to Seattle, obviously still playing at a high level. 2019, Dre Greenlaw. We all know how that played out. 2020, Colton McKivitz might be our starting right tackle next year. 2021, Jalen Moore, Diamador Lenore, and Talanoa Hufanga. Quality backup lineman in the 5th round. That's nothing to sneeze at. A starting cornerback. What's that?
Jalen Moore's not a hit.
It's not a miss. I'm not going to call it a hit, but I'm not calling it a miss. That is to draft someone in the 5th round and to be a backup offensive lineman, your 6th or 7th best O lineman. I'm going to take that as again, not a hit, but not a miss. And then lastly, Samuel Womack. Again, that one's a little bit undecided.
Seattle is just killing the drafts the last few years. They got Charles Cross, Kenneth Walker, Abraham Lucas, all starters, Tariq Woolen, starter, Devin Witherspoon, going to be a quality corner, and then Jackson Smith and Jigma. Like, this team is doing a retool the right way. And I thought we were going to see them in purgatory for a long time in the West. Pete Carroll's, whoever their GM is up there, flipping this around. Seattle's going to be looking good next year.
They're climbing. All right, last miss I have on there, Caden Smith in the 6th, and then 0 real clear misses in the 7th either. Adrian, we've only made 5 selections in the 7th up to this point, but Adrian Colbert, Julian Taylor, Richie James, Jawan Jennings, and Brock Purdy. None of those are misses for 7th round selections, and the Brock Purdy one may just have to be the biggest gem of them all. I would say, other than the 1st round misses where we sit right at that 50-50 mark, this team has been phenomenal at drafting players. And it really gives me a lot of positivity for what we may see in the next couple of days, my friend.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They have a lot of picks. I expect, hopefully, they have a lot of good movement and going up and getting some guys. I don't think 11 guys make the camp. Like last year, we didn't think all 10 guys would make it, and we were right. Who was the guy that got picked up? Who was a cornerback? It wasn't Womack. It was a different guy. He got picked up by another team. He was a corner we drafted in the 6th round. Anyways,
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but the name escapes me at the moment.
Yeah. So, you're going to be able to, probably not going to have all these guys make the roster. So I would prefer quality over quantity.
Agreed. And I got to say, I'm with Edward Austin saying, hey, the Niners have been drafting fairly well for the team. Yes, they have. This has been a phenomenal draft show. We've been on for almost 2 hours. We got to get going. I will be back on trying to do a show with Jack Hammer this week, doing the call-in show on Saturday. I will put out the poll as to when we have that call-in show on Saturday. Randon and I will be back together next week. As always, Randon, a pleasure chatting 49ers with you, good sir.
Good to have you back, my friend. Good to have you back.
It is good to be back. Good to be on the road to health. Put some of those pounds back on instead of losing them in an unfortunate set of circumstances. Dead on the Oregon Trail. Died of dysentery. It's not fair. All right, my friend, enjoy the rest of tonight's affair. You and I will be back on next week. And until then, faithful, you know the drill. Cheers.